Okay, I think we can start now. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on our tool, the Country Risk Register. We are very happy to see so many attendees today. Simon, Markus, and I will start by introducing ourselves before we can dive into the specifics of our tool. My name is Katharina Behrend, and I am a consultant at Löning. By profession, I'm a lawyer. Just a bit about my academic background. I studied law in Germany, the US, and in England. And in England, I focused my LLM studies on business and human rights. That's kind of how I entered the field. And after that, I passed the legal bar exam in Germany and then started working at Löning. Being a lawyer and being part of the legal team, I, of course, always evaluate our projects and also our tools from a legal perspective. Same, of course, goes for the Country Risk Register, which is especially aligned with the German due diligence supply chain law. Two quick reminders. I know you've probably all been to quite a few webinars at this point, but we will record the webinar and also send around the recording afterwards. And also, if there's any questions that come up during the webinar, please use the FAQ area to ask your questions, and then we'll come back to them at the end of the webinar. And now Simon will walk you through the structure of the webinar.
Thanks, Katharina, and also from me, a very warm welcome to all of you joining us today. My name is Toepfer. I'm also a consultant at Team Löning for 2 years now. My background is in international development and environmental policy, so I somewhat connect the two fields. And in the team, I have worked extensively on projects where we conducted a lot of research on different countries and different rights topics for clients, which sort of preceded the development of this tool. Briefly about the structure of the webinar, we're going to walk you through the tool itself to give you a bit of a user experience, where you will see the dashboard and the database behind the tool. And then we will give you an overview over the methodology. And for each of the sections, we supplement the presentations with FAQs that we've been receiving from clients and interested companies that we talk to. But yeah, as Katharina said, do feel free to add any additional questions you may have in the box. And we will leave a few minutes at the end to answer those. And now Markus will tell you a bit about the origin of the company and the tool.
Well, thank you very much for the nice introduction, Katharina and Simon. And welcome to everyone that's attending. My name is Markus Löning, and I started Löning Human Rights and Responsible Business in 2014. And ever since, we've grown a team of experts that really know a lot about business and human rights and have a lot of experience in working with companies of different sizes, from very large to fairly small companies. Most of what we do is establishing human rights due diligence processes for companies. So we help companies understand where they are regarding their risk exposure. So what are the main risks they have, and where they are regarding their management maturity. So are they addressing the rights in the risks they have in a way that these risks can be mitigated in a meaningful way. And then we help them roll out these processes and establish these processes across their functions, across their company. And one of the things we do when we assess the risks and we look at the first risk overview is that we look at the countries of origin. From that, basically, this tool evolved. We started researching risks for our clients. So what is the risk if they are procuring from Bangladesh or from India or from wherever across the world? And what are the topics, the human rights topics they specifically need to look at? And as we were using this and gathering this data, at one point we thought, well, we might as well share this data with others and sell it as a standalone product, because a lot of companies need risk data. And as you can see also with Katharina and Simon, it takes it takes a legal view on these risks, and it takes a research view on these risks. And both of them must be very solid and very, they must stand the test in the worst case, if a company is taken to court, that they can say, we based our risk prioritization on very solid data, on well-researched, with a lot of knowledge about human rights, worked out data. And that's the whole point about the country risk register that we're talking about today. So solid data that you can base your prioritization decisions on. I will stop here and I'll come back later. And Katharina and Simon are now going to take you through the tool, and I'll address some of the topics there.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Markus, for that introduction. I will now start with walking you through the tool. I think you should all be able to see the tool now. And yes, so this is the first part of our tool, the so-called country risk register dashboard. First, here you can see a general starting page where each user is welcomed to the tool and is given a quick introduction here on the right side. Then next up, we're providing a support page. Here you already see the 10 different risk topics that we are covering, such as child labor, forced labor, freedom of association, etc. Beneath it, you can see the explanation of the scoring system that we use. And on the right side, we are just providing some general technical instructions and support. Finally, let's move to the third part, which is the actual country risk register dashboard. Here, as you can see, we have a world map with all the different country specific overall risk levels that is visualized, as you can see. Then here on the right side, we have the 10 different risks, being child labor, forced labor, freedom of association, unequal treatment, adequate wage, adverse effects due to environmental change, land rights, working hours, abuse of force by private or public security forces, and the so-called enhancing factors. Each risk topic, there's a small definition or explanation given. And yeah, now let's maybe look at one example, look at one specific country. You can either select a country up here through this bar, or you can also select a country by clicking on it. Let's, for example, just as an example, look at Brazil. Here you can see on the right side the individual scoring for each individual risk topic. So, for example, child labor is medium, freedom of association is a high risk topic. And then here on top, you can see the overall risk level, which in the case of Brazil is high. Another feature that we are offering is the regions feature. If you, for example, want to compare different countries from one region, you can also do that. And then you can always use the reset button to reset the filters and get back to the original starting page of the dashboard. Another feature which is very important for lots of our clients, you can see here on the top right, the two buttons. We have the download to Excel button and the download to PowerPoint button, which means that you can download all the data from the dashboard to either Excel or PowerPoint. And yes, Simon, maybe you can tell us some more about the different risk topics at this point.
Yes, exactly. So thanks for introducing them. Behind each of the 10 risk topics that you see here on the right are different human rights indicators, a total of 21 at the moment, which inform the scoring for each country for each risk topic. The indicators are compiled by internationally recognized institutions, such as, for example, the UN Development Programme or the International Trade Union Congress. Each of the 10 risk topics are weighted the same. And so they have the same scoring overall in the overall country risk. And the indicators behind them are regularly updated. Some of the indicators you may then find are quite familiar to use, for example, the Human Development Index by the UN Development Programme. Apart from that, we've often received the question whether we can customize the country risk register to particular client needs, which of course we can. Either, for example, to one of the risk topics that you can see here on the right, or if your company or, for example, procurement department focuses on a different or a more specific right, then we can also do that. For example, for LGBTQ+ rights, we can conduct additional research and then, tailor a bespoke solution for your individual needs. And now back to you, Katharina. You will now walk us through the database behind the tool.
Exactly. Thank you, Simon. Yes, so here you can see the Excel sheets behind the dashboard pretty much. And this is really the heart of our tool. On the left side here, you can see the 190 countries that we are covering, such as, for example, Australia, Argentina, Belgium, etc. There are a couple of very small countries such as Aruba or the Cayman Island where there's not enough data available, but these very small countries are normally not very relevant for global supply chains. But if needed, of course, we can do desk research. And as Simon already mentioned, we can customize the tool accordingly. For example, if a client is very interested in the Cayman Islands also. But yeah, let's get back to it. Next to the countries, we can see the relevant region. And then again, we have the 10 different risk topics listed. If we, for example, look on the top here, Afghanistan, we can see the risk level for child labor, medium, for forced labor, freedom of association, unequal treatment, adequate living wage, adverse effects due to environmental changes, land rights, working hours, abuse of force by private or public security forces, and finally, the enhancing factors here on the right. And then, the very important part, which is the overall risk, which in the case of Afghanistan here, again, looking at the very top, is very high. One frequently asked question that we receive from our clients regarding the Excel sheet is, what are the so-called enhancing factors that you can see here on the right?
Yeah, and so maybe as an overview or to imagine them, these are factors and aspects which increase the likelihood of the occurrence of human rights risks and violations in each of the country. So here, for example, we are looking at things like corruption or institutional stability or instability. And for that, we use indices such as the Fragile States Index or Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index. Now, each of these indices, again, they're grouped into this category, the enhancing factors. And as I mentioned earlier, this is weighted the same as each of the other human rights risk topics. And yeah, since we're already talking about the details of the risk topics, maybe I should share some more about the methodology, which we will pull
Simon,
up.
Maybe we got 2 questions, so maybe I'll just give a brief answer, or together we give a brief answer. Mm-hmm. So someone was asking whether you can differentiate risks between industries in a specific country. The way this country risk register is used is like the first filter in a risk prioritization project, in a risk prioritization process. So you take a general look at the country, and a second step that we advise our clients to take is to look at the sector that you're working on. We are now presenting the Löning country risk register, which looks at the country level. And we're currently actually working on the sector risk methodology, or not the methodology, but on the data, which is quite a challenge because products can be very different and purchasing categories can be very different from company to company, but we're actually working, and there will be like an additional version of the country risk register with the country and sector risk register in the coming months, I guess, sometime in spring or early summer, that will be there. And the second question we got was, are indigenous rights also covered in your tool? If you look at the different, they are not mentioned specifically, but if you look at the different rights that are being addressed, like land rights, which is very often a topic for indigenous peoples, or discrimination or other factors, you will see that it is reflected. And if this is a specific need that you have, then of course we can also group indicators in a way that indigenous rights are shown as an extra topic.
Yes, thank you, Markus. Yeah, I have nothing further to add to that, so I will proceed. What you can see here is an extraction of our methodology slide deck, which every client will receive as part of the subscription package that we offer. It's important to also deliver this because it's important for laying open your due diligence steps and your prioritization steps, which tool feeds into, as Markus mentioned. And it's important to show that it's informed by the latest internationally recognized standards and information out there. So, for example, in other words, this would stand firm in case of a review of your methodology, for example, by a regulating body such as the BAFA here in Germany. Now let's look at the methodology. We follow more or less these steps that you can see here. First, we research and select the relevant indicators and group them into our risk categories. As we said, right now they follow mainly the risks of the LKSG, the supply chain law in Germany. Right now we have 10 risk topics, which are informed by 21 indicators. Each of the different indicators usually has a unique scoring system, which we then in our third step translate into our own standardized scoring structure. We calculate and calibrate the risk scores with each indicator for each risk topic for each country and come up with the overall score. And we also continuously update the indicators and overall country scores. And to give you an idea of what we use and what these indicators look like, we have brought two examples here. So the first one is an indicator which informs the risk topic of child labor and worst forms of child labor, which is the Children's Rights in the Workplace Index compiled by UNICEF and the Global Child Forum. And here you also see that this indicator is informed by several sub-indicators. So this is very often aggregated data that we use to cover a wide range of topics. And at the bottom of the slide, you also see the links so you can check for your information. And then the second example that we've brought is the risk topic of adverse effects due to environmental changes. Here we use the Environmental Performance Index, which is compiled by Yale University and actually covers 40 different performance indicators. So you see a very broad range of topics and issues which are being covered in these indicators. Sometimes we use one per risk topic. Sometimes we use more to supplement if the indicator has if the index has only a few sub-indicators. Now, as mentioned earlier, for each of the indicators, we conduct regular updates, and we also, of course, follow the legal developments and human rights developments more generally to include any updates we need to, or according to what you or your company needs specifically. And with this overview of our methodology, I hand it back to you, Markus.
Thank you very much, Simon. Let me just address, there's another question here. So one question was whether we're sharing the slides. Yes, we are sharing the slides afterwards, and we're also sharing the recording. We'll put it on YouTube or somewhere where you can access it, and also share it with colleagues inside your company or wherever. And we're also going to share the slides. There's one question that usually comes up in conversations, and that's a question: how is it updated? So we're selling this as a subscription, so it's not that you buy the data, it's that you get a subscription to the data, which means that whenever one of the underlying 21 indicators is updated by the body that publishes this indicator, we are going to integrate it into the risk calculation and into the table. So it means that whenever there's an updated indicator, you will have the latest data when you're using the dashboard. We will obviously inform clients when there is an update, which is meaningful. We will also tell them whether they change anything in the scoring. And also you will be, whenever we extend the methodology, like if there's new research and there are new relevant indicators out there, we will add them to the table. And we will also, in the course of time, of course, add other risk topics if we find that is needed and relevant. So the whole idea is that you always have the most recent data and the whole methodology behind it, also reflecting the latest status of knowledge around business and human rights. Now there's one question which is asking whether we're integrating severity and leverage in the calculation of these. In a risk prioritization process, severity and leverage, of course, have an important role to play, but they come at a later stage. At this stage, we're purely looking at the country risk as an overall country risk. This does not need to be super granular. It just needs to be meaningful and really reflect the situation in the country. So that's the first risk prioritization step or filter. The second one is, as I was saying, the sector risk, because it can be a difference, obviously, if you don't know where your goods are coming from, where they're being produced, where the assembly stage or the deeper supply chain is taking place. It's very important to look at the sector and see what are typical risks connected to this sector. And then in a normal risk procedure, in a risk management system, what is taking place is at that stage, then the individual management capacity of a country is taken, of a company is taken into account, which then also covers the issue of leverage. So what leverage does the company actually have? What's the relation with the supplier there? And also at that stage, the issue of the severity of the potential risk is taken into account. So severity and leverage need to be taken into account in a risk management system that is meeting international standards and also legal standards out there, but not at the first point of the filtering, which is the country risk. It is coming into the process at a later stage. I hope this is answering this question. So are there other questions we could answer for you? Or maybe also Katharina and Simon, you have some more questions out there.
Yeah, maybe I can take the next one. There's a question about the environmental conventions which are covered by the LKSG, and to what extent they're weaved into the country risk indicators. So as of now, we cover them in our environmental changes risk topic. The one that I've showed you earlier, where we have a large range of different sub-indicators which cover various topics, for example, waste management, which addresses the Basel Convention, and others. We are currently working on a solution to integrate them more specifically and more straightforward for solutions where clients are focused on the LKSG. But right now they are covered under that more general environmental changes risk topic. I hope that could answer the question.
Oh no, there's a question there about the price of the annual subscription. So you can use the country risk register basically in two ways. You can access it via the dashboard, which a lot of our clients are doing, and you can It includes three access. It's a Power BI dashboard, so you need a Power BI or general Microsoft license to be able to access it there. And it's accessible for up to 3 people, and we can of course give you access for more people if that's wanted. But the real most important use is actually that companies are downloading the table, the risk scoring table, and are integrating them into their own risk management systems wherever they are located, whether it's in the procurement system or in a different place. So that is this is the most used case, is that companies simply download the whole table and integrate these risk data in their own risk management. And the price is 5,900 euro per year.
I see there is another question about health and safety risks, and whether it is covered in the tool. As of now, again, this is one of the risks that we sort of split up into different other risk categories that you can see here, because as of our latest knowledge, there is no single indicator which can cover health and safety risks broadly at a country level. So right now we look at them, for example, in working hours, which of course plays into mental and physical fatigue. We also include them in our enhancing factors, which includes factors such as access to public services and public health services. And then we are also further integrating them into our sectors, where we can focus on more specific health and safety risks per sector, where it's then also easier to more straightforwardly include them in the tool.
Thanks. And then let me also answer this other question, which says, will the industry risk register be launched in 2023? Definitely. We're working on it. We're going to have a beta version in the coming weeks. And the intention is to launch it in the course of between now and the beginning of summer. So we're working very hard, and the teams are working very hard on it to make it available as soon as possible. And then there was a question about, maybe that's a question to Simon, about to what extent the convention covered by the Lieferkettengesetz, like the Minimata Convention, are weaved into the country risk indicators.
I think I already took note of that, but there is another question that I just see with the interest. For the risk levels for the industry risk register, I think most probably to make it easier to connect the two. But I think there's no final answer to that question as of yet, since we're still in the development phase of the tool.
But it will be done, the methodology will be constructed in a way, the risk scoring will be constructed in a way that customers can use both registers together and to get to come to an overall view of the risks regarding country and sector risks, so that you have an aggregated result there. Then there's a question, do you also provide guidance to mitigate the risk? Of course, we're a management consultancy, and the core of what we do is establish human rights due diligence processes with companies. We help companies develop a human rights strategy, an overall strategy, which means from starting point, from stock taking at the beginning, risk exposure, management capacity to meet the risk, and then building the whole processes or all parts of the processes that need to be built. Usually companies have something in place, but also usually it's not complete, and very often it's not systematic as it should be. So we help companies establish the whole process, which obviously also includes guidance on how to mitigate risks. It's even beyond guidance. We help companies set up a system of consequences. So what you do if you have identified a risk, if you have identified that supplier X or supplier Y has a medium or a high risk, what do you do? So what are the next steps that you do? So we help companies make decision trees to know what to do and to follow a process. And also we help companies then in a then with the mitigation phase, but also we help them setting up grievance and remediation systems. So basically the country risk register is like showing a small part of the work that we're doing.
I actually see another question, which is, do you have any plans to expand the 10 categories in the future? And maybe to touch upon this real quick. So as we already mentioned, the 10 risks that we are covering, the risks mentioned in the German supply chain and due diligence law, since this just entered into force. But of course, we also have in mind the other regulatory developments, for example, on the EU level with the Corporate Sustainable Due Diligence Directive, that is coming up. And which is, for example, also aiming at covering data privacy. So this could, for example, also be a risk category that we will take into account and where we could expand our tool in general. But then also, of course, as Simon mentioned earlier, if there is a very specific risk category that a client wants to include, we can always do that on a individual basis and customize the tool accordingly.
Right, so let me take the last question that we have here. And the question is, which sectors will be covered? We're working on that. And this is one of the crucial questions. It's also a question which is fairly difficult to answer because it needs to be, we need to be able to cover it with research in a meaningful way. So that it needs a certain degree of granularity. On the other side, it will probably never meet the granularity of a company that has hundreds or so of purchasing categories. So there will be a way between the granularity of some of the purchasing categories that some companies have and a too general approach. It will be a good approach. But as you're asking the question, where of course we would be very interested to hear from you what kind of granularity and what kind of sectors would be interesting for you, because that would give us some guidance on this question. So feel free to send me an email at markus@learning.org and share some of the thoughts or the needs that you have. So, and then another question came in. Let me read it out to you. So this covers from the Lieferkettengesetz the abstrakte Risikoanalyse, and we then need to verify if these risks actually apply for our suppliers' konkrete Risikoanalyse. If it is green, we do not have to do the latter. This describes the risk process fairly well. There's some steps missing, but the idea is exactly as intended in your question. The country risk register shows you where you start working. So if a country is green, it doesn't mean you don't have to look at all. In the second step, you look at the sector. Let me give you an example. If you look at a high-risk country like India, for example, very high risk overall country score, it then very much, the risk is very different for different sectors. If you go for, let's say, pharmaceutical, or if you go for automotive industry, which are industries which take a high level of education and a high level of quality management, health and safety protection, typically in factories, then the risk will certainly go down. On the other side, if you look at a country like Germany, Italy, Spain, the overall risk score is low. But then if you look into certain sectors like the building sector or the agricultural sector, you still have a medium or sometimes even high sector, because we see a lot of illegal migration or people that have no legal status, and there's as most of you will know, there's abuse taking place on the fields, and and also in the building sector inside of countries inside the EU. So you need to do both, and the combined score will then give you a guidance where to start working with your concrete suppliers. But we're also happy to explain that more in a personal conversation if you're interested to know more.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you very much, Markus. I think this is a very great way to end the webinar. If there's any additional questions, please feel free to reach out. Also, of course, if you're interested in getting a subscription, purchasing the tool, you can always reach us via email. Yeah, we'll be sending around the webinar, the recording afterwards. And thank you again very much for attending today. And yeah, see you in the next webinar.
Well, thank you very much, Katharina, and thank you very much, Simon, for creating this webinar and for taking us through this webinar. I think great job, well done, and thank you very much for everyone that was attending. Have a nice day.